Hey guys, happy Wednesday. Turn the news off and focus on doing a finish. That way you can learn something that you can turn around and use on a piece of furniture or restore something in your home. So this is Get This Look Wednesday. So if you go to our Instagram and Facebook, we'll show you a gorgeous vintage cupboard that has this finish to it. Look at this. I want to be able to get this close enough up on camera. Can you see these gorgeous cracks? Look at this. I want you to look at this finish because this is when you are able to do finishes and see pieces that you're like, oh my gosh, that's fabulous. Let's all be honest. Finishes sell furniture. Finishes is what we just fall in love with over a piece of furniture that we see. And this one, look at this. Hey, Stacy from Wisconsin. Hey, Ruthie. This one is one of my favorite finishes. So when we talk about all the different finishes that I love doing, this is one of them. Look at this. See this crack? I'm going to show you how to be able to create this today. Hey, Luann. Hey, guys. This is a lot more fun than watching the news, isn't it? Okay. All right, so I'm going to take you through this process. What I want you to do, and part of the whole reason in this series of Get This Look, is I'm wanting to start teaching you how to dissect something. So when you see it, I want you to go, okay. You'll hear me? It's so funny. My Old World Finishing students will say, I hear you. You're like Jiminy Cricket sitting on my corner going, on my shoulder going, do this first, do this second, do this third. So this is what I want you to be able to see. And looking at it is the fact that the first finish, the first step that you're going to have when you have a finish like this is it's going to probably be stained. The second finish is going to be that gesso. Do you see that? That's the second step, is that gesso underneath. Now, I'm going to walk you through these steps in just a second, but one thing I want you to really be thinking about is when you want to be able to get the paint to kind of pop off and to be able to get that really chippy, old world finish to it, like this, like that chippiness. See with that crack where it's like, and it will continue to kind of pop off over a period of time, which is okay and very desirable, is that is going to be your cracked gesso. It's totally different than the cracked patina. Cracked patina, I developed it for one step. The cracked gesso was developed for my milk paint process. So that's what we're going to create that. And then I came back on top of it with Amalfi, which is our Amalfi milk paint, and then finished it off with the antique and glaze and my wax. That's what I'm getting ready to tell you how to do. All right. So I'm going to turn the camera down. As you have questions, please ask me, and that way I'll go back and I'll answer them later. This is an opportunity for me to be able to teach you. That's why I do these, is for you to be able to learn the processes and then have the excitement of being able to enjoy the bragging rights. So you can definitely ask questions, but I also want to take you through the process of step by step, because here's, hey Stacy, hey girl. All right, look at this. Now, if you can believe this, this is the finish that I did with the blue, the Amalfi. That's what it looks like. So it's not perfect. It's not perfect at all. It's got streaks in it. It has coverage, and it only has one coat of paint, which I'm going to go over with you. But look at this. This is the after. Pretty fab, huh? This is the after using the antique and glaze and the wax. So look at that. Yes, this is a lot better than the news, Ruthie. Thank you for my, thank you for the well wishes and prayers for my parents. Thank you so much. All right. I'm going to turn the camera down so I won't be able to say your names, but here's the deal. Y'all know the drill. If you are catching me live, and for the next 48 hours, if you share this video, your name will go in for a drawing. And I'm going to be giving away some Amalfi Coast and some cracked gesso. Amy's gone rogue. I love giving away product to those of you that are kind enough to watch me, and even kinder to share the love, because sharing is caring. So that way, it helps other people, especially those that want to be able to, oh, and thank you for the love, silly Facebook and all the algorithms, it does help when you send me the love, and a lot of people call it sprinkling. So anyway, but I love for you to share this video, and then that way we can start teaching people really how to rescue and restore furniture in a beautiful way. So thank you. All right, so I'm gonna turn. I'm rogue, aren't I, Ruthie? All right, so let's go down. Let's get into this, because we've got to go through the steps on this for just a second. All right, so let me get my computer over here. I'm gonna get this computer so that way I can see you and I can see some of your questions. So give me just a second. So weird to be doing this and see myself on camera. I don't know that I'll ever get used to it, but it's such a great vehicle for me to be able to teach you. All right, so here we go. All right. So here are the steps. This is what I want you to be able to understand. We started with raw wood. So I just went to the hardware store, and we just have regular pine, that way you can cut it up. Now, I'm all about having a repertoire of finishes that you can be able to work with, but I want you to be able to see the steps. I think visually being able to see the steps to be able to get to this absolutely gorgeous color. I wish it was where you could see it and be here with me, because guys, I'm just going to tell you, it's absolutely fab. It looks so much like the cupboard that I showed you as far as get this look. It's really, really fab. If I get that up there close enough, can you see it? Isn't it fab? All right, and the colors are just absolutely yummy. Here's the other thing that you're going to notice. This is just one color. It's got the cracked gesso underneath it, but this is just one color of paint. And the process that we use on the milk paint and the finish that I'm showing you makes it look like it's 3 or 4 different colors. It's really fab. Okay, so I've got raw wood. No step, but that's what you see what I'm starting with. The first step, what did I do? It's pretty straightforward, so I'm not really going to show you this step, but you're going to go over the stain. Okay, I'll show you. Hold on just a second. So let's push this up. I'll show you, because a lot of people are like, how come she didn't show us that? I like staining my raw wood. If you're working with raw wood, I would stain it. And this is using my gel stain. This is English walnut. It's water-based. It has no VOCs. It's really easy to use. Super, super easy. Goes on really easy. And basically, you can just apply it. Always go with the grain. You don't want to go against the grain. Apply it liberally everywhere. Like this. And then just wipe it off. So I usually use a lint-free rag. And then I'm just going to wipe with the grain like this, and do it fairly light. You don't want to scrub it, but it is a process of just kind of wiping that off. You want to make sure that you don't have any streaks. You can use a brush if you want to. If Gene was here, he'd say, how come you didn't show him to use a brush? Because I'm just wanting to be able to get some color. So that way now my raw wood has a little bit of color to it. So that's step one. So this is dried down. When you're working with the gel stain, it's going to probably take about 30 minutes to dry on raw wood. So it's going to dry down to a beautiful matte finish. So it's really nice. All right, so step two is putting on our cracked gesso. Now, y'all are probably going, Amy, why is there blue showing? Because this was a sample that we were working with in the studio, and we put some white over it, but I'm going to show you. So, step two, we stained it one, and now we're going to do the cracked gesso. So this is our cracked gesso. This is a gesso. It does have calcium carbonate in it with some other secret ingredients that I cannot tell you. But it is what allows you to be able to get this look. If you want to know what it does two things. It gives you this gorgeous white color, which is the gesso that you're going to see on any antique piece. If it's a true antique piece, it's going to have gesso underneath it. It's going to give you that white that you're going to be able to antique down into. And what's the other thing it's going to do? It's going to give you these cracks. Aren't those fab? It's what really gives you a beautiful finish. That's what's giving me these cracks, is the cracked gesso. So I get the look of the gesso and I get the crack. So I'm going to take this, and it comes in these resealable bags. And I'm going to mix it up to be about the consistency of thin sour cream or pancake batter. Now, I will tell you, doing a lot of this is like cooking. And so I usually tell people when I am working on it, it's kind of like I feel like I'm making some coq au vin or some French recipe, because it is very important in how you mix it, how many steps you go through, that type thing. So I'm going to take 2 really hearty teaspoons and put it in this little cup. This is my cracked gesso. And then I'm going to take some regular tap water. And what I want you to do, this is not going to be mixed like your milk paint. This is going to be thicker. So I want you to put just a little bit in it, and then we're going to mix it up to where it's like a paste. And I would rather you go thick and then thin it down, because I don't want you to get it too thin. All right, so I'm going to add just a little bit more water. Got that on my other sample. And then start to mix it up just a little bit at a time. You are going to have some kind of granules in it. You want to make sure that you stir that up really well. And I will usually let it sit for about 20 minutes before I actually get started, because that way those little areas that maybe that you didn't get stirred up really good will dissolve. All right, so this is about the consistency that you're going to be. All right, now I had some that I made right before we went live, and this is what I'm going to use to be able. Now I'm going to let this fall down in here. I want you to kind of see. That's about how thick it is. Now, here's the other thing. If the more cracks that you want, the more of the gesso you can put on. I don't want you to go too heavy, but I do like to do 2 coats. Make sure that your stain is completely dry before you put this on. If this is wet and you haven't allowed it to dry good, you know what's going to happen? It's going to turn kind of a pink color. It'll make your cracked gesso go brown. So allow your stain, if you stained it first, to completely dry. All right, so now I'm just going to take a regular chip brush, and I'm going to load it up like this, and I'm going to brush it on. You want to, again, apply it with the grain. Get it everywhere. You want to make sure that you have really good coverage. You don't want any holidays. And now, as I start to go back over it again, I'm going to lighten up my touch just a little bit. I want it to where my brush is not sitting on it quite as much, because that's going to get some of the brush marks out of it. Now, it's impossible to do this to where you don't have any brush marks. You will have some, but if you can kind of feather it like this, you're going to be much happier in the long run. So then feather that. Allow this to dry for about 30 to 40 minutes. Then after this is dry, you're going to come back with sandpaper, and this is 220. Now, I'm going to put a second coat on this. I'm going to allow this to dry 30 or 40 minutes, and then I'm going to put another coat on it just like I just did, because that's going to be what's going to allow me to get these gorgeous cracks. Now, can you see this? See the cracks on that? That's what I get with this cracked gesso. If I want more cracks, that's why I do 2 coats. If I don't want as many cracks, I can do just 1 coat. Is everybody with me? All right, so after that dries, you're going to have to sand it. Always, 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 always sand cracked gesso. Always. So now, I've got 220 sandpaper, and you're going to be sanding it again with the grain. Now look what's happening. Do you see this? Look at this. Do you see this residue that's coming up from it? We've got to have that. I want you to sand this gesso down to where you don't have any brush strokes anymore, and it's going to look like this. You're not going to see it. All right, so I'm going to dust that off. And again, the reason this has blue on it, we had it in the studio, so don't look at that. Now I'm going to mix up my paint that I'm going to put on top. So this is my Amalfi Coast, and I'm going to mix this up differently. Now here's the deal. When I mix up the cracked gesso, it's thicker. When I mix up the milk paint, it's very important that you mix it 1 to 1. Do not, guys, please, do not mix your milk paint up really thick like you did your gesso, because you're not going to be able to antique it right. It's not going to look right. It's not going to work. A lot of people think they try to mix the paint to where it's thick because they think that's better and they'll get better coverage. Don't do that. It's going to make it to where you're not going to be able to distress it as well. All right, so I'm going to put a little bit of my milk paint in there. This is going to be mixed 1 to 1. So you're going to need 1 part water to 1 part of your powder, okay? So I'm going to take this, I'm going to add just a little bit, the same way that I was doing as far as working on my cracked gesso. I want you to put just a little bit of water in and kind of make a paste at first. Please don't be afraid of this. It's not something that you need to be afraid of. It's so easy, and once you get used to it, it's like you fall in love. So I will do this. I'm going to do a shout out. Tomorrow, guys, my Old World Finishing course opens. It will go live at 9 o'clock, and it will close Sunday I think it closes Monday morning. I think they did talk about that. But when that closes, the season's over. And so if you are interested in really taking your finishing to a whole new level, you want to be part of that course. I mentor you. We have live mentoring sessions. You have your 10 modules that you go through, and you have a workbook. It is very much worth the money if you want to. You could literally make back the money that you did on your very first piece of furniture. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit more milk paint to this because I got it just a little thin. So I usually will blend it better when it's thicker, and you can hear it. Can you almost hear that? See that? It's kind of granular. Hey guys, thanks. As you pop on, please share this video and tag some friends in it. Then that way your name is going to go into a drawing day after tomorrow, and I'm going to be the lucky winner that has shared the video, because sharing is caring. I'm going to send you this paint with the cracked gesso that you can use on a project. All right, so I'm just stirring that up really good. I think I'm almost happy with the consistency. Now here's the deal. When you're working with milk paint, it's totally different than the cracked gesso. The cracked gesso is much thicker. This milk paint is going to be thinner. I do not want you to have it too thick. It's runny. You're going to be like, I'm not used to painting with runny paint, Amy. Trust me, this is the way it's going to have to be done. In order for you to be able to antique it, it's necessary. Okay? All right, so now I'm going to take my chip brush again. Just make sure that's stirred up really good. I usually, too, will make my milk paint at least 2 or 3 hours before I'm going to paint. If you can do it the night before, that's even better. It just allows it to be able to dissolve. So I'm taking my chip brush. When you're working with the milk paint, you do want to make sure that you agitate the bottom of it as you are painting, because the pigment will have a tendency to settle to the bottom. And you're just going to cover this cracked gesso completely. 100% coverage. And you're going to notice when you mix water with this Amalfi Coast, it's going to go a lot darker. So if you wonder what it's going to dry down to, it will dry down to the color that it is before you mix it with water. So it's quite a bit darker. All right. So now I want you to be able to see the difference. This is the same color dried, and this is wet. So it shows you there's quite a difference between in the drying process. It's going to take me approximately 20 minutes to allow that to dry. It's going to dry fairly quickly. And I'm only going to put on 1 coat. I'm not going to put on 2 coats. So now I'm ready for the magic. Now let me show you. You're going to take your antiquing glaze. I've got one here that's a little bit more full. You're going to take your antiquing glaze, and I want you to have 2 cups. So you've got one that's water and one that's antiquing glaze. I'll pour some more in here. Now, I will tell you on this that I cut mine with some water. I didn't use straight antiquing glaze on this project. I put a little bit of water in it. And you're going to need a seawool sponge. I like them this size, that they're really small when I'm working on samples. Put it in your water. You want to make sure you get it nice and soft. And the reason for this cup of water is it acts as my bath. It helps me keep my sponge clean without getting it into my glaze. So I'm going to come over, like if I'm working on a drawer or a top of a piece or the side of an armoire or whatever, I'm going to work in sections. And I'm going to do a pass. I'm going to wet the whole thing. One thing I want you to notice, you know what I didn't do? I didn't go like this. I didn't work my way in lines. Please don't do that. What I want you to do is I want you to work in very organic. Think about South America. I want you to kind of go around and then come back down maybe into a tail or Florida. But I want you to be able to do a pass, and that way it's wet. Now, I know you're like, she's messy, and this is just really a mess. There's no way this can turn out fab. Let's show, if y'all are just now popping on, look at this. Let's look at this again. This is what we're going for. So remember the first step that we did. We had our stain. The second step, what did we do? We did cracked gesso. The gesso is the white underneath, and it's also what's allowing us to have this crack. Now we're going to antique it, because the antiquing process is what's going to allow it to lift from the gesso and allow that white to show through, and I am not using sandpaper. You cannot get an organic, authentic looking finish with sandpaper wearing it. You just can't, guys. And now after it's kind of sit there, you see it, like I'm allowing it to kind of sit. What it will start doing is it will start to allow this to be kind of wet to where I can start to lift it, and it will look like the sample that I've showed you. Now, because I went over this, there's some paint in here. So I'm going to put this in my water. Now, every finish is different. You can have more pristine finishes. I'm wanting to show you something today that is much more kind of chippy, that's much more vintagey looking, something that maybe has been in a barn for a while. Now, can you tell? Can you see this? Look at this. Can you see how it's starting to come off? So now I'm putting some pressure. I'm starting to almost scrub it. Look at this. Look at that. Can you see it starting to come through? I'm scrubbing it a little bit. Look at the other thing. What are you noticing? I've got glaze sitting on top of the surface. You've got to do this on a flat surface. Whatever furniture that you're working on, you're going to have to lay it down on its back like this, whether it's a drawer or whatever, because of the way this process is. All right, so I'm going to pat this because I like to kind of see what I'm dealing with. And now I start to work on the composition. I've got to make sure, I'm going to clean this out my water just a little bit. I've got to make sure that I've got a really pretty composition. And here's the deal. If you take too much off in one area, it's so easy to fix. And I'm going to show you that in just a minute. I'm going to intentionally take off some. I'm going to come down just a little bit more. I want you to be able to see this just a little bit closer. I don't know if that helps just a little bit. I'm going to now I can start to see my gesso coming through. Now you'll notice too, what am I doing? It's also kind of a hit drag. Now I'm going to come back. I want to be able to have some area around the edges antiqued. So I'm going to clean this out here. I'm going to come back into my glaze. And I'm going to start to wear. Now the edges, we need to think about how a piece would wear. And I'm going to start coming around the edges because this would normally be an area that would have some natural wear and tear. And I'll feed my way in. As a rule, I'll work with a rag as well as my sponge. Look at that. There's no sandpaper. This is a way to be able to get this really natural look. Now look at this. Can you see that edge? That way it allows me to be able to wear that off, and I didn't use any sandpaper and it looks much more natural. Now I can continue to work and pull this paint off, And what happens, I'll start to see my gesso underneath. I'll have a little bit of wood show through. And I'm going to intentionally take a little bit more off because I want to be able to show you just how easy it is to be able to fix it. So you see it's several passes that have taken place for me to be able to kind of get it to this point. And that's why I've got my rag here that I can kind of pat so I can see what I'm doing. Now I know it looks kind of scary, but let me show you something. Here's the fun part. Let me clean. I'm making a mess, aren't I? Guys, thank you so much for catching me live. Here's what's fun. If you will share this video, your name will go in for a drawing, and we're going to be giving away the cracked gesso and the Amalfi Coast that I'm working with today. All right, now, I intentionally took off some because here's what I want you to do. You can come back and you can add some with your fingers, and you can kind of blend this in. I do this intentionally. So I'm going to come back with some of my paint. Actually going to thin it down just a little bit. I can take this dirty water, no big deal. Told you it's a lot like cooking. I'm going to blend this. So I'm going to come back in where I've got a couple of places that too much came off. And I'm going to hit it like this. And what that does is it kind of gives me another layer. Look at that. If there's any areas that kind of bother me, I'm just going to hit it. Look at that. Ta-da! So what it does, it gives me even another layer of maybe how that would have worn through. I'll come back with my rag. And believe it or not, this is such an artistic expression, but yet it's so easy. I'm going to dry this just a little bit. I'm just blending that I put on, so that way you can't see really any stop or stop marks. I can come back and just add a little bit more paint here and there. So here's what I want you to notice. I've got to let this dry down. But what I want to be able to show you is as this dries, the color is going to go lighter, and there's something else that's going to happen. That's when you're going to start to see the paint start to pop off. And it's going to probably take me about 15 minutes to let this dry. Then it's going to start to pop, and I'll allow some of it to literally come off completely because I like the way that looks. And then you're going to come back and put on your light wax, your dark wax, and your dust. And I'll show you how I did that. As I am working on it, now I did this right before we went live, but I'll show you. I'll use my light wax. I always use a puck when I do Toscana. So I'll load this up like this, offload it, and then go over it kind of here and there like this. I don't want to do real heavy solid coverage. That is not desirable. Kind of go over it like this. That's going to allow the cracks in the gesso to start to pop up. Then I want you to use a totally different brush, and you're going to work with the dark wax. Load it up. Don't ever use the same brush for your wax. Offload it. Now, come around the edges like this. Just dust it. One of the fastest ways you can ruin your piece is by putting on too much wax. So just kind of come around the edges like this. and then fan it into the center. Then by coming back and doing your dust, I'm going to sprinkle just some of this on. This is your dust of ages. Then I'm going to kind of work this into the finish like this. And then I'm going to come back. I want to buff it in the same direction as I painted it, as I antiqued it. And I want to be able to get a little bit of sheen. So I'm going to put a little bit more pressure, but I don't want it to be shiny everywhere. And adding that wax is what allows me to be able to start to get several different colors of blue, where it literally looks like I painted it with like 3 different color blues. I know these lights are kind of hard for you to be able to see, but hopefully it allows you to be able to see a little bit. It's really, really quite beautiful, and it is so easy to achieve. It's something that it's a little bit out of the ordinary of maybe the way you've normally done finishes, but I promise it's something that can transform the way you paint furniture. It's okay, Elaine. Go back. Just do #replay and watch the video later. So it's really, I wish y'all were here and you could see it. It's so much prettier in person. But this is why I love the process that I have developed of our milk paints, our cracked gesso, and our waxes. So hopefully this inspires you. It teaches you to be able to look and dissect finishes, because these are finishes that will sell furniture. You have my word on it. Guys, our Old World finishing course goes live first thing in the morning. It will close out. Season 4 will close out late Sunday evening. So if this is something that you really want to delve into and you want to be able to know and create finishes like this and really thoroughly understand it and have me mentoring you all along the way, I'd love for you to be a part. It's a beautiful tribe. Have a great day, everybody. Stay positive. We're all in this together, and we're going to take care of each other. Love you guys. Mwah.